A woman refused to let him board first class, but regretted it when she heard his reply. Steve had no clue that his traveling experience was soon going to take a drastic turn. A woman kept on passing mean comments on him. Traveling through airways is quite comfortable and time-saving, but sometimes this very situation turns opposite and the airport's place becomes hectic and stressful at times. Airports are very much busy and have difficult places to locate, which often leads to a chaotic situation. Steve was super excited and felt stress-free as he took a break from his long busy schedule and work. He was 30 years old, hard-working man who was a senior manager at a very well-known music company. Steve was traveling through Los Angeles Airport and was looking forward to his first-class trip. As a birthday gift to himself, Steve saved money for months to splurge on a first-class ticket. He even worked hard past week to clear his workload. The man planned for every eventuality and even looked forward to flying a day prior to his birthday, so that he had enough rest and time to celebrate. The enthusiast didn't have any clue that a woman was about to ruin his day. And soon he was caught completely unprepared for the offensiveness he was about to encounter. Reaching 2 hours before the flight, Steve got his luggage and everything checked. Steve humped and tapped his feet as he waited in the queue. Life was good and he was happy as he recalled his hard work, which was now paying off. He couldn't wait to reach Australia for a kickback and enjoy some much-needed vacation time. His joy was soon going to take a nasty turn. Slowly the queue was shuffling forward and Steve anticipated that the time to board his flight was soon coming closer. While waiting, he heard a high-pitched voice coming from behind. An American woman was trying to push past him in the queue. "Excuse me," was the words of an American woman, who approached Steve. She deliberately looked up and down at Steve. In her mind, the woman assumed that Steve was not meant to be there in the same line as her. Pointed out the flyers, which were signs meant for first class. She indicated that this line was only reserved for first-class flyers. Steve was mystified. The woman continued and in a harsh tone said, "I think you are in the wrong queue." Before even Steve could correct her and explain to her that he was flying from the same class, she tried to push him and get in front of him. The lady yelled and said, "Get out of the line and let us through." Steve remained calm. He was wondering what was wrong with the women. He looked at the woman puzzled and calmly responded that he was meant to be in the queue. But the American women kept on refusing the fact and repeated that "You are not meant to be here and let us through the queue for priority booking." The women continued to hound Steve, snapping at him by saying, "They'll call you once we the first-class passengers are boarded." Steve was confused about the fact why this woman is so sure that he doesn't belong to this line and why she thinks that I'm waiting in the wrong queue. Soon Steve was beginning to get annoyed. He pulled out his tickets and proceeded to the woman to show her that he was exactly where he was meant to be. Steve thought that he didn't have to prove anything, and even though he showed his tickets to put an end to the altercation. The woman didn't stop here and loudly said to her friends, so loud that Steve could hear. She moaned aggressively and said he must be from the military or something, but he still has to wait as we paid for our seats. Steve couldn't believe his ears. He didn't want to cause a scene at the airport and thought of some excuses for the women's behavior. After thinking much longer, Steve presumed, why exactly is the woman behaving this way? But he didn't want to believe that she was judging him because of his skin color. He began to second-guess himself and didn't want to end up thinking about the rash conclusion. The women continued to pass harsh comments on Steve. It was that time when the more he mulled over her harsh comment, the more incredulous he became. He again gently told the woman that he was been waiting in the queue first, so he won't move. Apparently, he was soon clear about his thought by looking at the woman's clothes and realizing that even she was not particularly well dressed either. He didn't want to conclude, but he did and couldn't ignore the issue any longer. Soon Steve's response made the crowd applaud his actions. Without waiting any longer, he broke his silence. Steve looked back at the woman and retorted, "Too big to be in anybody's military, and I am just an African-American man with money." He shot her a marker and it looked like the lady was struck by his words. Her eyes widened in disbelief as she recoils in horror. After hearing the words, the crowd blew in cheers and was delighted by Steve's witty retort. It was Steve's stature that he booked the first-class ticket and the comfortable seats just like everyone else in this queue. With his thoughts racing miles a minute, Steve knew that his words won't be enough for the American woman put her in place. This whole incident left Steve with the thought that, despite the modern and fast-growing world, there are still people who are mean and keep pulling others down. Out of the blue, Steve thought of sharing the incident on social media and expected that only his friends to see it, but little did he know that soon his post was about to buzz around the internet. Within 2 days after he uploaded his story, the post got shared more than 25,000 times, and thousands of people commented praising his response to the women's illiberal behavior. One admirer even wrote that never judge a book by its cover. Steve's story was an inspiration for people who don't open up and stand for their rights and continue to suffer in such situations. Though Steve never wanted his story to get so much publicity and regretted it later, but his courage was applauded by the audience.